Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY!
43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that punch?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! And Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard to my fellow jabronis. How are you? Happy hump day. Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Jim Coyle with you as always. Appreciate you joining us. Hope you're having a good hump day. It's a cold and rainy one out there. That's okay. Wasn't expecting to get too used to that beautiful weather we were having, but it's a good start to getting us to the rest of the week, right? Something we can look forward to. Lots to talk about. Of course, no better place to start for most people than Indiana getting a win last night over Wisconsin, a team that not that long ago was leading the Big Ten. Yeah, they went from, what were they, 8-1 to 10-7, something like that. Crazy. Fire alarm going off at Simon Scott Assembly Hall last night. BYU wins at Kansas. The combine taking place up in Indianapolis still. Auburn takes on Tennessee tonight. Texas Tech fans get a little rowdy in a game with Texas. Reed Sheppard leads Kentucky. 32 points. Freshman. Man. But welcome aboard. Happy to have you. John, the producer, along right now. Looking forward to talking to Cal Neddenriep a little later from the Indy Star as the boys' high school tournament gets underway. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com will join us as well. Hope you had a great start to the week and have made it to hump day in fine fashion. Welcome to everybody hitting us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Of course, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, powered by Andy Moore Honda, and brought to you by our good friends from Hoosier Hanks East, where last night, after the game with Todd Liry took place, which was a lot more palatable show to have to do than has been the preceding, I forget how many games they'd lost in a row, 4, 5, something like that.
I think it was 4. The number was getting up there for sure.
Wild and wacky night in the world of college basketball is
I'll tell you what, wild and wacky is right. You already covered most of the nonsense from college basketball, but here's a couple more things. Keegan Nickerson, formerly a member of this staff, he put together a list of things on a social media post of that went down in college basketball all in one night. So aside from the things you already mentioned, Cincinnati had more turnovers than first half points against Houston. You already mentioned Assembly Hall.
Oh, wait a minute.
We can stop if you need to.
Yeah, how many points did they score?
I believe the halftime score, if I remember correctly, was 26-17, something like that.
Yeah. And they had more than 17 turnovers in the first half.
Again, and that's a ballpark number. I know they had less than 20 points at halftime, but evidently they had more turnovers than points, which is insane. So you already mentioned the Assembly Hall fire alarm. You mentioned BYU beating Kansas shortly after losing to Oklahoma State recently. Texas's Brock Cunningham was ejected while up 25 points with 10 minutes left. That seems a little excessive. I don't know the reasoning, but you mentioned Texas
I watched
Tech.
it. We'll talk about it.
Texas Tech's Grant McCaslin had to get on the mic and tell Texas Tech fans to stop throwing things on the floor. Sounds more like a West Virginia basketball game, if you ask me. And then lastly, Peyton Sanford goes for 26, 10, and 10. That is a triple-double for the Iowa player. So a lot of February madness, one might say, as we creep up to the beginning of March here in a couple of days.
Yeah, I want to get the stats for this game from last night. For that Houston-Cincinnati game and see the first half. There's 17 points in the first half, but all right, box score. So turnovers, they had 19 as a team. So very possible. Holy cow. I don't know if I can find a place to separate this one in the first half and second half, but 19 total turnovers. So 29 turnovers in total for that game for everybody. But wow, that's nuts. I don't know how you can turn the ball over that many times in a half. That's crazy. But so for Indiana fans, there you go. There's always a darker turn around a different corner, depending on which corner you're looking around. Fire alarm goes off last night at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. It was weird. I had gotten up to go use the restroom, and I knew it was about between 10 and 11 minutes to go. And all of a sudden, but as I'm walking through the main thing out front, I see all of these people just pouring down the escalators. And I'm like, there's 10 plus minutes to go in this game, and it's tight. I go, where are all these people going? I mean, and I just kept going to the restroom, and then I figured out that there was a fire alarm going off. But even then, I was like, they're not evacuating people, are they? And then once I came back out of the restroom quickly, you know, it was just a matter of minutes. People are pouring out of Simon Scott Assembly Hall. I'm like, yeah, they are. So that was kind of wild to see that happen. Turns out there was a fire alarm up in the balcony. I heard that there may have been a small fire in the concessions area. I don't know that for a fact. I don't know if one was just pulled. Who knows? It went off. Got people out. It shows it can happen.
Listen to this exchange that was on Twitter last night. So it began with a no-name account saying something, followed by a response from Tom Crean, and this is in relation to the fire alarm. So an account said, I hear Tom Crean is in the rafters of Assembly Hall threatening to cut down the Jumbotron above the court unless his luxury box is left open. Tom Crean responded to this tweet with, no, bro, I was on a Delta flight watching Kentucky versus whoever they were playing, Mississippi State, and Cincinnati at Houston on my way back to Florida. It wasn't me.
I love it. I got to be honest with you. I love when people respond like that.
Oh, yeah. Tom Crean, I don't know what it is about him being in this analyst role that he has now at ESPN, but he's thriving in it in all facets.
Let me tell you why. The pressure, baby. Let me. What kind of pressure do you think comes with being the head basketball coach at Indiana versus what he's doing now? And I'm not saying that as a slight. Hey, he's good at what he does. He knows what he's talking about. It doesn't mean you always implement things correctly. You don't have to love him as a coach. But he's been a really good friend of the show, and I think he does a good job at what he does. So yeah, it's funny how perceptions are, but I love it when people respond last night. As far as the Texas Tech deal, yeah, that started out as there was a loose ball right around midcourt and two players converging, and the one player he knew the contact was coming, and he really braced for it and gave the guy a shot. It wasn't. He was smart enough to not make it. There was like no extension of the arm or anything like that, but he gives him a shot. Of course, you know, that kind of fired the benches up, and nothing really happened. But the Texas Tech people start throwing stuff onto the floor. These are plastic water bottles and whatnot, but it doesn't matter. It's stupidity, pure stupidity. Okay, what are you doing? I'd love to grab somebody by the collar and say, all right, so what the hell are you thinking right now? What is it that you're doing that you think, what change are you implementing by throwing something just aimlessly out there? And not that I haven't done idiotic things in my life. I'm a walking daily dose of idiocy. No question about that. But there is that. But yeah, their coach has to get on the mic and tell them to stop. They'd already gotten one technical foul, and they continue to throw stuff. They're like going, hey, every time you all throw something, it's going to be a technical foul. Stop. So especially in a game that's that crazy far out. But yeah. BYU winning at Kansas. If you have any doubts about BYU, don't. They go to one of the hardest places that there is to win in college basketball and get a win. Crazy. BYU. This is another reason why I get IU fans being upset. BYU. That stands for Brigham Young University, for those of you not in the know. Just kidding. That bastion of college basketball. But they're for real. The Big 12 is for real. Mike DeCourcy does not agree with me, and that's fine. But he is not a Big 12 advocate as far as them being as deep as I think that they are.
The
But
one
really,
thing,
what
the one argument
is
you could really use against the Big 12, and I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but their non-conference schedule, I believe, of all of the Power 5 teams or conferences, excuse me, they had the worst record when it came to power versus power competition.
Yeah,
Now,
and I
again,
get that, but that's mostly from like November and early December games.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that they don't mean anything, but if we all know that teams that are in November are not the same as January or February or March. And if you're getting better, then you're getting better. But if you play an entire season against teams like Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Baylor, BYU, Texas Tech, TCU, Oklahoma, Texas, come on, man.
No, I'm in agreement with you. They are the Big 12 for the last 2 years has been the dominant conference, and maybe it'll continue to be that way. But it feels like it goes in phases. A few years ago, the Big 10 reigned supreme.
Now, it doesn't mean they're going to win a national championship necessarily.
Of course not. I mean, the Big 10 hasn't won a national title since 2000. It's been 24 years.
And they have probably, well, I won't say just as good a chance to win it because they're not, the league will not have as many teams in. But at the end of the day, who's your best shot? I don't know. I mean, Kansas is just one of those teams that, boy, you think that they're capable of winning and capable of losing. I mean, that's about the end all of college basketball right now. There is no team that is unbeatable. You have teams like Purdue who are very unique in how you have to beat them because they have something that nobody else has, a Zach Edey. And that changes everything. Just like last night for Indiana, for all of the non-Xavier Johnson fans. If you don't think that he made a difference in that lineup last night, well, you're wrong. Because he did, and it was very visible. The minute he came into the game, he impacted the game in a positive way for Indiana. He was not in the game 30 seconds, I believe, and he either had a rebound or a steal or whatever happened on the left side or a kick out, and then I think he had an assist on that run. He had a 3-point shot. He played 15 minutes and did not try to overdo things. I'll be honest with you. The offense looked, I don't want to use the word balanced because obviously it was a very, very heavy interior based offense, which that's Indiana. But they just looked more balanced because the ball was able to move around more when Xavier Johnson was in the game. And I think that by seeing that, whether it's Trey Galloway, whether it was, Gabe Cups, there was just a little more action. Boy, did Kalel Ware get off 20 first half points. Ended up with 27 and 11, I think. Malik Renew fouls out for the fourth time in 5 games. But that last foul was kind of weird. He was thinking that they wanted him to foul. And that was just a dumb foul. But just miscommunication there. But why he would think that they wanted him to foul in that situation out away from the ball when he had 4 fouls. That's, I don't want to say that's a lack of basketball IQ, but it certainly stems from that. It certainly stems from a lack of communication, a lack of knowing what's going on in the game. We've got to take a break. Plenty more to come here in this first hour. Appreciate you being with us. Everybody on the Andy Moore Honda hotline jumping on from all over the place. Appreciate everybody listening on our affiliates on 97.7 The Ref, ESPN, always the right call, down in Evansville, Indiana, of course, up in the region, the voice of the region, 12:30 a.m., 104.7 FM WJOB, and over in Fort Wayne on 1380 The Fan, Fort Wayne's only sports station. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. Hey, when you get a chance, try to pull up some Todd Liry.
Any specific time frame just that you want me to look at?
Man, no, just I guess when he usually talks for a minute, so anything that you grab from him is good. You can probably just with the start. We'll start with that.
That's fine. I'll let you do this segment alone, and I'll work on pulling up that stuff, and I'll send you a text when I've got it where I want it.
Don't leave me alone. 5 Laps has returned.
Has he been gone?
I didn't see him. I thought
I feel like he's been around. Maybe I'm oblivious.
Oh yeah. We got the ESPN tournament champion or ESPN brackets. Jimmy Brackets. Jimmy Brackets.
A lot of people will begin to call. I mean, obviously, there's no way they're going to the tournament regardless. But if they finish out, not that they're going to win all of the rest of their games, but if they were to find a way to win the rest of the regular season games, I think people.
Well, it would be a great way for Indiana to finish the season.
It would show that they can at least handle some adversity.
I said that on the postgame show last night. Hey, any positive finish to the season for Indiana is a positive finish to the season for Indiana. So.
Yep. I mean, it doesn't matter if you go to the NIT or anything. Just the fact that you finish strong is a good sign on that you can at least get your players to play for you whenever things are looking bad.
Probably should have gotten Kyle to come on at 9:10 and go long maybe because the sectionals have started.
I'll send him a text and see if he wants to do 2 segments. He may or may not be able to do that, but I'll send him a text.
Or ask him if he can, not wants to.
Yeah.
But especially 9:30 puts him in the first hour and
I'll give him a shout and see what he's able to do. All right, here we go.
Located on South Walnut in Bloomington and is your one-stop shop for high-quality meats, bakery items, and now fresh seafood. Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Court, presented by Indy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Thanks so much for being with us as we're about to head out of February, baby. We're going to head out of February like a baby. What I should have said. Ha. Get it? Head out. Welcome aboard. Appreciate you being with us as always. Indiana high school sectional play underway. Indiana Hoosiers get a win. So for those of you in that genre, you should be happy. The Big Ten rolling. We're getting closer and closer to tournament time. I don't see any way of things changing for Purdue in winning the Big Ten, of course. No one to really challenge them. Illinois was there, but they lost that opportunity. Purdue currently 25-3 overall. Illinois 20-7 overall. Northwestern, Nebraska, Wisconsin. And I think that Michigan State will find a way to get in, but they keep trying to make it interesting, and they come to Simon Scott Assembly Hall to end the regular season for both Indiana and Michigan State in a week and a half or so. Indiana goes on the road for 2 games to Maryland and I can't think of the other road game. Minnesota, up in the barn. Up in the barn. Talked about that last night with Todd Liry on the postgame show. How that place is just cavernous, like a barn. Cold. He said it was always cold in there, but he liked shooting there. Appreciate everybody hitting us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. As I said, Fred, John, Justin, Dr. Drew, Forrest, Michael, Kent from Mount Pleasant, Dwayne, Philip, 5 Lefts. Always curious on some of these names. Need the history behind 5 Lefts. Good, unique name. I like good, unique names. Buffalo Bill on. Appreciate you. Storms. I did not hear a single storm last night. Did I miss out on it? Although it is much cooler and rainy today, I did not hear a single rumble. Derek says, with X having 5 turnovers last night, it concerns him that Woody thinks the season would have been different had he been healthy all year. Well, that's a lot of turnovers for 15 minutes of play. I'm not going to lie to you. I'd have to go back and look at them because they don't stand out. But yes, I agree with you. Depending on the situation, circumstances, was it rust? Was it sometimes you're throwing a pass to somebody and they just turn their head? I'd have to go back and look at those individually. But that's something to look at for certain. But at the same time, man, he's been in and out of the lineup. So probably tough to get things going again. Gritty says, for a fire to break out in the concessions, that means they actually had fresh popcorn. Hey, now. I don't know that to be a fact, so that was not put out by Indiana. Indiana just said that there was a fire alarm in the balcony. And then I had heard something about a concession stand, but that doesn't really matter, I guess. It shows the system works. That's for sure. checking out all the other. Yeah, Kentucky gets a win on a last-second shot. They were down. Mississippi State was a 4.5-point favorite going into that game at Mississippi State. So tell me that Vegas does not know what they're talking about. And speaking of which, as we get closer and closer to the tournament, our man Pete has got the ESPN Men's Tournament Challenge is up and open. Jump on. Of course, it doesn't cost anything. Let's see. We had last year was fun because it was so wild and wacky. But just go to ESPN, the app, under fantasy, and then underneath of that, I forget exactly. I can pull it up quickly though. You pull down you go over to the fantasy tab, and then the Men's Tournament Challenge. You hit on that and look up the group Indiana Sports Beat Fans. Indiana Sports Beat Fans. And I am trying to remember the password, Pete, because I know that there's a password. Was it just Indiana? Yep. Password Indiana. There you go. Very easy. Very easy. So, what to see who can, which of you can figure that one out? Because this one's going to be, it's not picking the champion so much as the other games underneath. So, but I'm signed up. I'm ready to go. Jump on and grab a hold because it'll be here before you know it. Last night after the game, of course, Todd Liry broke down the action, which it was a lot more fun to be heading towards that show, knowing that you didn't have to talk about the same old stuff because that's what it had become, and that is just not fun. But here's what Todd had to say in his opening comments.
And they needed something good like this to happen. Like they needed the opportunity to, build on something. Even when you had made good plays and done things well, still losing, like you're not able to build on that. And so that's when you look at this scenario, and I think there are so many different things to take away from this game that I really hope the coaching staff and players are able to do that. Like there are so many lessons that they can learn from substitution patterns to how guys played together to plays that they actually ran. There's a lot that can be built on from this. Yes, the win is huge, gigantic. That's what they really needed to have happen. But there's a lot they can take away from this to really build on. And I know the skeptics and people that are trying to look for something down will say it's too late. And whether that's the case or not, like they actually have a bunch of stuff that came out of this game that, and here's why I say it this way, because when they were playing well, they were doing certain things, and I'll explain this in a minute. But then when they started struggling, they went back to playing their offense the way they were before. And so I'll kind of elaborate on that a little bit here by
recordings just got better.
My apologies for the lovely folks listening to us.
That's all right.
YouTube ads get in the way, but just give
me automatic commercial there. I didn't. I never heard that. We're back
on track. I've never had that happen during one of our shows before, but we're back, and here's more of Todd Liry.
When Indiana was just trying to pound the ball in the post, they struggled. They had virtually no turnovers in the first half. I think 2 at halftime. And the second half, they really just turned it over, and almost every single turnover was just trying to feed the ball in the post. And that's because you can't do that at this level. Like what they did in the first half, drive and penetrate, kick the ball, run the ball screen with Trey Galloway. Trey Galloway had 6 assists at halftime. off of just that ball screen motion that we're kicking the ball out for some shots. We missed a bunch of shots in the first half. Could have had an extended lead, but to focus on the positives, like they were moving the ball around and not just trying to pound it in the post. That's what I hope the coaching staff takes away from this and realizes, hey, our offense looked really good when we did this. It looked really bad when we did this. And the bad part is just trying to feed the ball in the post. I know we got great big guys. I want those guys to be the leading scorer of every game. But at the end of the day, like, they cannot be the team that just sits there and tries to pound the ball in the post. We've proven that's not going to work. So I just hope there's so many positives that come out of this. Fans can, me included, all of us can relax a little bit and enjoy, a game that you beat a good team, easily the best team that we've beat this season. And so, we have to be happy about that. But at the end of the day, like, there's some really good things to take away from this that hopefully we build on.
Todd Liry from after the game with Todd Liry last night after Indiana knocks off, I guess you could say, upsets Wisconsin, a team they have had trouble with, not so much at home as much on the road, but getting a win, period, in the Big Ten. Huge for Indiana, as that gets them off the schneid. More importantly, it gets them out of the bottom five, or four rather. And I'd forgotten to bring that up. One spot outside of it right now, but they're actually tied with Maryland for that fourth spot. Now, Maryland is one of the places where Indiana goes to play, so that's going to come into play. Maryland, Rutgers, and Penn State. Penn State is a game ahead, but I think they may have played. Yeah, they played one more game so far, so they could slide back into that. Fortunately for Indiana, it's going to be between those three teams, the Hoosiers, Penn State, and Maryland, for that last fourth spot in the tournament, which means you play from day one, which is not good for a number of reasons. Although if you wonder if Indiana could use another game or not, the opportunity to win a game, because it would be against one of those teams. And right now it would be against Michigan, whom you would want to play to get a game under your belt in the tournament. I wonder if that would be better for the Hoosiers. Not certain, but Kyle Neddenriep's going to join us in this hour as well. We'll start talking about the Indiana High School tournament, which is underway. And let's see. What other big games happened last night? I want to make sure I don't miss out on any of the scores, man. What was last night? A Tuesday. So, yeah. Of course, talked about the Kentucky game, the BYU game. How huge is that? That's going to really, Kansas is probably not going to get a number one seed anyway, and they're not going to get knocked off of the 2 line. They'd have to go on a skid to fall off of the 2 line, in my opinion. They lost to BYU, who, ironically, not ranked at the moment. Is that real? Huh. They're 20-8, although one game over 500 in the Big 12. But that's not something that is a much of a negative. More games up on the docket tonight. Louisville and Duke. Oh, John Boy. Will our boy Kyle Filipowski, will he play? I can only hope. I hope that he's not so injured that he can't play. Oh my.
I'll tell you what, we've talked about this on the other show that I do in the afternoons, and you and I get on the same page, Jim. I hate to act like a player is faking an injury. even though to me right now, that's where I am. That's where that's where my feelings are at on how all of this is played out with the court storming. And the way
Both
that they
times it
continue
has
to
been
talk
so
about
obvious
this.
to me, though. That's the problem. It's like, dude, come on.
And here's the thing. There was talk yesterday that Kyle Filipowski may sit out against Louisville today. But here's the thing. They don't need Filipowski for
Exactly.
tonight
If this game was against anybody, I sent a tweet out yesterday that said this. If this game was against anybody except for Louisville, there would be no question on whether or not he plays. Now, whether or not they want to milk this because they can, because it's Louisville, yeah, we'll see. But I get out of here with that. I'm not saying the court storming is okay. I'm not saying that what happened is okay.
This isn't about the court storming. It's more so about him playing the victim because of the court storming.
I will never court storming. I will always just think of this.
For those
of you listening on radio, I was just putting my hands in the air and just slowly spinning around like I'm falling to the ground, because that is the indelible image that will always be in my mind from the Caitlin Clark incident, to where she hits the one person and then is able to magically, it's like she's on her tiptoes, just pirouette in a 360 degree with her hands in the air. Not breaking the fall. That's like the latest flop thing. Anytime someone gets close to hitting somebody above the neck, there's always that 1 second delay where they get hit and all of a sudden the head snaps.
It's like they've been rear-ended.
Yeah, but it's like a whole second after the act.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wait. They're like, oh, wait a minute. They hit me there. Oh, I have to snap my head as if I just got my head taken off. So
and here's the thing.
that.
Regardless of whether Filipowski plays tonight, the most annoying thing about this game,
he's gonna play. Give me a break. He's gonna play.
Regardless, the moment that let's just say he starts hopping on his leg or something. That's what all they'll talk about. It's gonna be the Kyle Filipowski show tonight whenever Louisville comes to town.
Yep. Louisville Duke tonight. Missouri, Florida. Our buddy Kevin Brockway on that one. Number 11 Auburn at number 4 Tennessee. Bruce Pearl. Providence is at Marquette. Iowa State is number 8. Iowa State is ranked number 8. That's crazy. South Carolina, they travel. Creighton is at home to Seton Hall. Minnesota goes to Illinois. Alabama is at Ole Miss. After they come down off of a beatdown, my God, they gave up 117 points to Kentucky in that loss the other day. And then Arizona travels to Arizona State. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Cal Neddenriep from the Indy Star is going to join us as the Indiana High School Boys Basketball Tournament is underway. Bang! It has started. We'll talk about that. And Rick Bozich joins us in the next hour as well. Right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home,
Jabba dabba doo.
Holy smokes.
Kyle should be on momentarily. Holy smokes. All right, here we go.
And selection of Andy Moore Honda in Bloomington. Right now, get a brand new Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right, 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday. Appreciate you being with us. Brought to you by our good friend Cheryl Sizemore and RE/MAX Realty. For those in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore and her 2 decades of experience. It could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Kyle Neddenriep will be joining us shortly as we'll talk about the Indiana High School Boys Basketball Tournament. Talked to Todd last night. He played for Lawrence North, won a state title there. They were number 1 for most of the season, and then I think Fishers is up there. It's going to be fun. The 4A tournament is just going to be fun, and I like the 4A versus like 6 classes in football. You still have there's enough teams in 4A to where that's challenging. Yeah, it would be cool if you could do a 1A versus 2A and 3A versus 4A kind of tournament of champions, but at the end of the tournament and you win a state championship, I would imagine the emotions, you achieved what you set out to do. Kyle Neddenriep joining us from Indy Star. Kyle, I was just talking about how in basketball, 4A is, I like it so much better than say 6A in football, because there's still a large enough amount of teams to where it's a pretty good representation of what it should be. It would be great if there could be a 1A versus 2A and 3A versus 4A kind of tournament of champions after that. But I can only imagine the emotions after winning a state title, after, achieving what your goal was, to have to try to get up and do that again and once or 2 times more is just not really reasonable. But I like where Indiana and their tournament is right now. I know a lot of people wish that they would go back to the single class, but that's not really realistic, not in today's world, when you have a school like Carmel that has 45,000 students and versus all these schools that don't. It's just not realistic. This is not 1954, and there are no Milans out there. There's not any team that I can imagine in 1A that compete with a 4A team, but you see much more than I do.
Yeah, I mean, there are years where I think a 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A champion would be interesting, because you've had, I'm trying to think back. I remember the year when Greensburg won state, and I think it was the same year Tech and Greensburg and Park Tudor was really good in 2A. And I can't remember the 1A champion, but I kind of mentioned that I thought that might be a good year to do it because Park Tudor and Greensburg had played
a lot of good competition and whatnot. But yeah, I think this when I first started doing this job, I think the single class argument was still very much alive, and people, there was even a proposal to, go back to 3 classes at one point. It didn't get to the proposal stage, but it was something that was kind of in the, the Athletic Directors Association was weighing, and I think if they would have originally, if you go back and started with just going from 1 to 2 classes, that may have been a better, and then you expand it as needed, but they didn't do that. So going backwards is just too hard. I mean, you have a lot of the schools that are used to playing 1A or 2A, they have no interest in going back to something that's more difficult for them to win a champion. I get that, you have to remember all these schools are looking at it from their own perspective too, not just the greater, fan, which, you could argue.
They're not looking at it. They're not looking at it from the greater good standpoint.
No, definitely. I mean, and that's kind of the issue. I mean, because it just doesn't, when you do proposals like that, it doesn't get enough support because of that reason. And I totally understand that, that those things, but like you said, the landscape of, we just don't have, I mean, if you look at the enrollment sizes and whatnot, I mean, Milan, they were a small school, yes, but there was a lot of small schools at that time. I mean, they were actually,
I mean, there was like 700 schools back then, wasn't there?
Yeah. And I'd have to go back and I've written this many times, but they would have been like a 3A school because of the way the cutoffs would have been if they had class at that time, because there were just so many small schools. So, that's just the reality of, how things have changed. There's a lot of things the School Consolidation Act of 1959, that changed the, just changed everything in the next decade or two, as far as closing schools, consolidating schools. And, and now we're here in 2024 with, like you said, a lot of, and especially with the suburban sprawl and things like that, it's really changed the dynamics of the power dynamics in a lot of cases. So it's just, you're seeing a lot of these schools get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's kind of created this mix of schools that, it's part of the reason they're going to this change with how they're cutting off the classes and how that will, how that will look going forward. And you could argue maybe they didn't do enough to change it, but they've kind of left the idea open to doing further in the future. So I mean, we could get into that at a different point, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't sense there's going to be a go back to one class. And I think a lot of those people are older now, or kind of time goes on and it becomes less of a thing, and it becomes more about, I hear a lot more people arguing for seating and things like that than I do one class anymore, which wasn't the case, 16, 18 years ago.
Yeah, to give people a better example, just using Lawrence County, south of Monroe County, where Bloomington is, where Bedford is located, there were 5 high schools there. Heltonville, Bedford, I don't even remember. I don't even know them all. I didn't grow up there, so I don't know. But I know that there were 5 schools, I think, at one time. Well, now they have 1, Bedford, North Lawrence. So you got 5 schools that went to 1 right there, and that happened. Whether it was 3 schools to 1, that happened so many times that the amount of schools has been cut in half.
Yeah, and I'm always, I wrote a book about some of these old places. I'm always fascinated by these old towns that used to have schools, and it's just there are such great stories in these little towns, even now, and eventually a lot of those gyms, get torn down, or
which is a shame.
Yeah, it is. It's sad. It's part of our American history, really, and that passes by. And but yeah, I mean, some of these schools do use them for elementary schools, and that's awesome. But yeah, it's definitely we're losing a little bit of that remembrance from that generation of people who remembers those places. Because like I said, time passes. It's just the nature of life.
The Wigwam, what is that still a gym or has it been converted to other usage?
No, it's still a gym. It's and I don't know that there's obviously they haven't played games in there or anything, and I don't know that they've done anything with it. Now around the perimeter of the gym are classrooms and things like that. So there are, I know, there's things going on in there. The last time I was in there, gosh, it's probably been, I don't even know, maybe 8 years ago, and somebody let me in who I knew, and I don't even think we're supposed to be in there, but I ended up, but the person who let me in was with the school, but one of those things where we go in there and it's like, it was like a ghost town, it was so strange. Like there was stuff, even in the locker rooms that were left in there, and, the scouting report, it was just like stuff that, it's like people just up and left all of a sudden, so it was just kind of strange to be in there and still have everything. And I don't know if that's still, they've probably cleaned it up a little bit more since then. And there's always talk that it could reopen or they could use it for something at some point. And that would be awesome. I don't sense Anderson moving back there as their home. They've got a nice home gym that they play in now. That's probably a better, it could fill, they can fill it. I was there last year for the Kokomo game, and it was awesome environment. It was probably 3,500 people there, and it was awesome. But they just can't, the last few years of the Wigwam, they just weren't even, felt like such an empty place. And, they didn't have a need. And part of the reason the Wigwam, they're off, it's kind of off by itself. So it's not, tied to the school. So it's kind of out there on its own a little bit. So I think that hurts the opportunity maybe to reopen it.
For those of you not in the know, the Wigwam, the former home of the Anderson Indians, and now how many schools are in Anderson?
Well, they have Anderson Prep, they have Liberty Christian, so they don't have Madison Heights or Highland, but they do have some charter schools and things like that. So, but yeah, that's definitely changed too, because they went from 3 big ones, and you go back in the history, man, they were all 3 of those schools were dominant. I want to say, and I was trying to. I didn't have a chance to look this up yesterday, but I think all 3 of those teams, maybe in the early 80s, were ranked number 1 in the same season. For some reason, that rings a bell for me. But I'd have to. I was trying to think. There's 3. We have the top 3 teams in the sectional are in sectional 8 at Noblesville this week, and someone was asking if that had ever happened, that there was 1, 2, and 3 in the same sectional, and I thought maybe that Anderson situation, but yeah, they were. Anderson was the place for basketball for a long time. That's for sure.
We've got to take a break, but we've got lots more to talk about. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Stars with us as the Indiana High School boys basketball tournament has gotten underway. Talking about the Wigwam. How about Ray Charles performing there in 1961? Wow.
Did you watch
some history?
Did you watch the what's the Netflix show about what's the song We Are the World? Have you seen that?
I did. Yes, I did. Very cool. I talked about that not too long ago. It was just wild watching all of that. But yes, how that came to be with all those people in one place. Nuts. We've got lots more. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star with us, back right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. Man, I can't believe that they've let that thing go, though, because, I mean, it's just a roof with bleachers. How hard can that be to keep up?
Well, yeah, they've had some. I know some different people have tried. Gosh, it's been probably 2 years ago, and I heard that there was a group coming in that was, and I think it was actually reported on that they were going to come in and try to do something with it, and it never came to fruition as far as I know. And I don't think Anderson, the school, they have their own gym now at the high school is perfect size for them. They don't need that big of a gym, even though that place has such meaning. I just don't think, it just doesn't seem like it's likely that, and I'm not sure that's really what the current people want there.
Does it have leaks? Does it leak or anything? I mean,
I think there's some of that they need to do. Maybe not leaks, but I think some upgrades they would need to do. And honestly, when I was in there, it was sort of it wasn't in bad condition, but it felt like just it hadn't been touched for like a couple of years. It felt like it was just kind of.
It wasn't.
Yeah, I know. I don't think it was. It was kind of dusty, and it wasn't in bad condition.
Fort Wayne, I guess, with the Ford Center, or the center they have up there, I guess is taken away. You don't really need a gym that large there for, say, semi-states or whatever. But gee whiz, it's just wow. It was the second largest gym. I mean, just under 9,000 people.
I mean, it would be cool if they could just do, even if they didn't use it all the time, like get it ready, whatever you had to do, and just have something there to like have some closure, I think, because I think that's, I mean, I don't know if they really had that necessarily, or maybe it's been enough time now where people miss it and it's still there. So maybe you should do something with it before it becomes too far down the road. You know what I mean? But I don't know. It's just kind of sad.
Yeah, old Norm Held, man.
Yeah.
He won a lot of games there.
Yeah, Charlie Hughes, who I knew really well, passed away a few years ago. He was an Anderson guy, and he knew all the history there. And I can't remember the guy who let me in there, and I think he might have gotten a little bit of trouble for allowing me to get in there and walk around. But
all right, here we go, guys. Construction, now building exclusively south of Bloomington within the Stonecrest Golf community. Choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Revesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Hump Day Wednesday. Appreciate you joining us. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star with us as Indiana's boys high school basketball tournament has begun. Not only has it started, you got some of the best teams in the state playing already, as number 1 Fishers, number 2 Noblesville were already out and about and in action. Anything shocking happen up to this point? It's been early. It's early. Only been one night of games.
Yeah, one night. So there hasn't been, we don't have a full, we'll get some more games tonight. I was out at Noblesville last night, and those games weren't, they weren't thrilling necessarily. I mean, the atmosphere was great. The kind of everybody was looking forward to that. Certainly the Fishers Carmel game, because Carmel had beat Fishers, the only team to do it this year. And that was the second game last night. So you could kind of feel Noblesville kind of put the finishing touches on Zionsville. They were up comfortably, ended up winning by 18. And, you could kind of feel as that Fishers Carmel game was about to start. I mean, the energy was through the roof, and Fishers came out and just laid it on them. It was 16-2, in the first 5 minutes, and then Carmel was playing from behind. They got it down to 8 a couple times in the fourth, in the third, but couldn't get over the hump. Just a lot to come back from that, against a team that's really good. So yeah, I was impressed. Fishers came out ready to go, and that sets up Friday night, which should be awesome. They have Noblesville and Westfield will play each other, and Fishers and HSE, which that's obviously a huge rivalry between those two teams. And HSE has been good this year. That's a team that's probably flown under the radar slightly, but they're 15-9. And they played Fishers to a 7-point game back in December. There won't be any fear factor, for them playing Fishers. So that sets up as a really fun atmosphere. Westfield Noblesville games first, so that place will be jumping at 6:00, and then Fishers HSE in the second game. So that'll be a wild night. But yeah, I would say there were the Mount Vernon New Pal game. Well, I would say that was slightly surprising to me. It was one of those weird games where Mount Vernon had really beat New Pal handily just last week. But New Pal was without Ben Slagley, one of their best players there, and definitely their best big player. And he came back and played well last night, and they ended up beating Mount Vernon 58-56. And that's that sectional with Braylon Mullins from Greenfield's in that one. They play Anderson. And, it's a very wide open sectional. Richmond's having a really good season. They're in that group. And, I actually picked Mount Vernon to win it slightly. I didn't feel super confident about that, but they had been playing really well. They got Luke Ertl back, the sophomore guard from he'd been injured. So he played about 5 or 6 games at the end. So Mount Vernon goes down. So that was a big one, maybe a slight surprise, definitely a big game. I was a little surprised Franklin Central got beat. They had got off to a really good start this year and played in the Marion County championship game. Roncalli beat them 57-46 last night at Southport in Section 11. So Roncalli moves on. They'll play Decatur, and then Ben Davis is on the other side of that bracket. So they're fairly heavy favorite, although they play Pike tonight. Pike's had a bad season to a large extent, but they do have some talent, and they that's a rivalry game. So that one could be interesting. Chesterton beating Portage, that was a big game. I kind of had my eye on that one, watched a little bit online. That's a game I thought could have gone either way. Chesterton, Tyler Parrish, really good player, Justin Sims, a couple of guys who could be Indiana All-Star types. But there wasn't, I didn't sense, Warren beating Lawrence Central. That was kind of a toss-up game. Warren had to come back in that one. Brownsburg beating Plainfield, that again, Brownsburg I think was probably slightly, you would pick them, but Plainfield a good team. But yeah, I don't know that there was any necessarily huge upsets last night, at least from what I could tell as I was looking through it.
And with the lack of seeding, are there any big time semifinal games that are coming up? Either they wouldn't be tonight, obviously, since last night was the first play. So either tomorrow night or set up for Friday already.
Yeah, I mean, Friday, obviously, you'll have 2 versus 3, which is Noblesville and Westfield, which that'll be an outstanding game and definitely a toss-up game. I covered that game the first time, and Westfield won on Noblesville's home court. And, I felt like Noblesville left a lot on the table that game. They missed a lot of, paint shots, and that's, Nick Book for Westfield's a reason for that because he's, big guy inside. But I feel like Noblesville, has been really good all year. When they're at their best, I think they might be right up there with Fishers and certainly Lawrence North, which, when they're at their best, they might be the best team, but they haven't kind of played that way here recently. But yeah, so that'll be a huge one on Friday. And then, of course, tonight you still have some really good ones. I think the speaking of Lawrence North, and Anderson Greenfield Central, mentioning Greenfield Central, the Anderson Greenfield tonight, that should be an outstanding game. And Anderson's knocked them out the last 2 years. So this is kind of a chance for Greenfield to, get back at them. And I know Anderson, they really drive the ball. Damian King, a slasher type player, tough matchup. But Greenfield plays zone, so I don't know. Anderson's probably going to have to make some outside shots or get out in transition. So that's a really interesting matchup, I think, just from that standpoint of strength versus strength. They're going to have to Anderson, I think, try to force some turnovers in that game, make it a little bit more up tempo. And then at Lawrence North tonight, sectional 10, Attucks plays Tech, and then North Central plays Lawrence North. So those two old rivals go at each other. So that'll be, I think, an interesting game too. Lawrence North, put it on North Central the first time by, I think, 20, and then that was in the county. And then they came back, played the next week, and North Central almost beat them. It was a 2-point game last time they met. So that'll be a good one tonight over at LN, the refurbished LN gym over there. So that one should be good. There's some other ones out there, certainly in the lower classes too. But yeah, there's a lot of games tonight. I think a lot of games that, last night maybe more of a run-of-the-mill night, and then tonight you'll have, Heritage Hills too. I didn't mention them in 3A. They play Princeton. Another game where they just beat Princeton last week by
very dangerous.
Yeah, that's tough. It's at Princeton, so you go down there and play in the sectional. That Princeton's kind of a younger team, but definitely a team. Lamar Brown's done a good job kind of getting that program turned around. So that'll be one to definitely keep an eye on. I'll be trying to pull up the stream on that for sure if they have it. Yeah, there's Wapahani Lapel. That's another good one tonight out at Alexandria. This is a Wapahani team, I think, that's ready to make a run. But Lapel has been, they beat Tipton last week. Tipton was ranked number 1 in 2A, and they've been on the rise here. So that one could be interesting. I would think Wapahani would win, but again, things get weird this time of year. So yeah, those are some of the ones tonight. I think, and then obviously some games are set already for Friday, but I haven't even looked ahead to Friday, Jim. I'm one day at a time. I'm keeping it one.
Trust me, I hear you, brother. I hear you. I can only imagine how many games you have to manage between now and then. You mentioned Heritage Hills at Princeton with Trent Sisley, and he wants to, even though this is his junior year, wants to go as far as he can. He doesn't. Not a slight against the rest of his teammates, but he doesn't have a lot around him. Usually when you see a team that has someone of that caliber, they have another player or two. And boy, Coach Nate doesn't have a lot to work with besides Trent.
Yeah, it sort of shows itself when they play, some of the better teams. I think, you can kind of get away with it to a certain extent, when you're playing maybe schools that are more your size, or maybe not, some of the teams you see, and they do play in a good conference, so they're getting tested. A lot of those teams are, that sectional this year has got some really good teams in it. They lost to Southridge a couple weeks ago. That's always a tough team. Princeton, like I said, is on the rise, but when they play in some of these games where they come up and play, in some of the showcase games and things like that, it's just you can kind of see some of those deficiencies that you mentioned. I'm always careful, like high school kids, you don't want to rip them or anything, but it definitely shows up, the talent level, and some of those things show themselves when Heritage Hills plays in some of these showcase games. But Sisley does make up for a lot of that, and he obviously draws a lot of attention, so if you can find some other points from open threes and guys coming off to guard him and making him a priority, he is a good passer too. So, I know he's looking to get people involved. It's just a matter of how much they can help him on a given night. But I still think I like them to, they'll probably have to play Southridge again if they can get to the championship game. And they've got a pretty tough road. They, like I said, have to beat Princeton. Probably, Washington's been playing a lot better, so they could see the Hatchets on Friday night, and that could be a tough game too. But then, beating Southridge again, they didn't do it last time they played, so that could be a tough matchup for them in the championship game. But I know they're only worried about trying to get through tonight, and it's always fun, from a general fan standpoint. If Sisley does advance, I think that would generate some interest, obviously, and people just, we know who this guy is, and it'd be fun to see him play in the next round. But of course, those teams playing him in the sectional don't care about that. So they're trying to knock him out here this week.
Yeah, and what makes it bad for teams like Heritage Hills when you have the one guy is, they generally have to play out of position. Trent Sisley is a wing, is what his natural position is, probably a 3, maybe a 4, I don't know, but that's what he'll play in college. But now, hell, he's playing the center spot a lot of the times and just gets pounded, double teamed, and it makes it difficult for teams like that.
Yeah, and you've seen a few things this season where he's been kind of knocked around a little bit, and some scary stuff. At least one that I saw that looked like a little bit dirty, but so you're dealing with a lot of that. Teams that just they know who you are, and they want to knock down the king, so to speak. So it is tough. I've seen that. Obviously there's a lot of high school kids that have kind of had the target on their back like he has, and every scouting report is built around you, and especially in his case where, like you said, I mean, he didn't have a lot of D1 guys around him or anything like that. So his role is I'll really be curious, once he gets to college, what type of role I'm sure in some ways it'll be a little bit freeing for him, I think, to, play like he kind of does like for AAU and things like that, because you just have better players around you. So I will, I really like Trent's game. He works his butt off. I mean, that's one thing watching him play. I mean, he just works and works, and, that's maybe the best compliment you can give to him is he's always working.
The Taylor Titans against the Tipton Tornadoes tonight. They're not really the Tornadoes. I don't know what they really are, but
they're the Blue Devils.
Are they Blue Devils? I always call them the Tornadoes just out of respect for our good friend Derek Elston, the original Tipton Tornado, which he may not even have been the original. Who knows?
Well, that's he was a tornado. I remember covering them when they were playing Deshaun Thomas for Lures, and I can't remember what round of the tournament that was, but Tipton's back. They're really good again, and they're a team I think that could make a serious run. I think in that sectional, they're pretty clearly the favorite. Tipton plays Eastern on Friday night, so yeah, Taylor I think is. They should probably, they play Blackford tonight. That could be an interesting game, but I like that Tipton team. They really shoot it from three. They play up tempo style, and Cliff Hawkins is their coach. He's been a lot of places. He coached at DeKalb at one time with Luke Recker, and then went to Center Grove for a while. So he's been around the block a few times and got a really good team this year.
Joe went to Seymour last night, the largest gym in the world, I guess, for that matter, right? They're the largest in Indiana, but regardless, that's a unique site. It will host a sectional, a regional, and a semi-state. There will be upwards of 27,000 people in that gym over the next 3 weekends. Jeffersonville beating Seymour last night. New Albany beats Bedford North Lawrence. That means Jeffersonville takes on Floyd Central next. And I'm going to assume New Albany will play Jennings County in that semifinal coming up next. But Floyd and Jeffersonville went at it previously in the year. Fonzo White doing a good job at Floyd Central, but our friend Sharon Wilkerson doing a great job at Jeffersonville as well, running that motion offense.
Yeah, that is Jennings County. You mentioned they would play New Albany there. Carter Kent is their star player. I covered them a couple times last year. Haven't seen them in person this year. They lost some key guys. They had a really good team. I mean, they were excellent last year, made the semi-state, and played Brownsburg in a really good game at Newcastle in that first semi-state game and lost by 4. But yeah, that Carter Kent can really fill it up. Good player. Rob Kent, his dad, is coaching now that Jennings County team. I would think New Albany, having a good year. But Jennings County did beat them when they played them a few weeks ago, so that should be a really good game. And then Jeffersonville, I would think they're the pick for sure in that sectional. To me, I've seen them play a couple times. They've got obviously Sharon's coaching them, but Trey Coleman inside for them, and then they got some really good players around them too. So I like that Jeffersonville team. I think they're one of those teams that they remind me of. 4A has been so dominated by Central Indiana teams this year. I think it's just that type of year, but they remind me of a team that's from here, the way they play and, how they play. And I think they've got a pretty decent route to make a run. But of course, yeah, that Seymour sectional is always something crazy seems to happen there. So I wouldn't count on anything for sure. It's obviously great crowds always and lots of fan support, and looked like they had a couple of good games last night with, or at least one good game, close game I saw with Bedford North Lawrence going down to New Albany by 2 points. So obviously it was a really good game there last night.
Make sure you give him a follow if you're not already. Kyle Neddenriep will keep you up to date on all things in Indiana high school sports. Appreciate you, my friend.
No problem. Thanks, Jim.
You betcha. We've got more coming up, including the captain, Rick Bozich from WDRB.com on the backside of this. Brought to you by the Ugly Grouper.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Sorry about that, John Boy.
Oh, it's okay. It happens.
Morning, guys. Who pulled the fire alarm?
I have to admit it. I did it, but it didn't work out. No, I'm just kidding. That was wild. I had gotten up to go to the restroom and was walking across the front entrance to use those restrooms. And even then, I'm like, what the hell? It was like just under 11 minutes. The game was tied or close. I'm like, where are all these people going? So I went into the restroom, and then you get in there and you could see the fire alarm going off. You could hear it. And I'm like, I guess that's it. I'm like, really? And I come back out, and now they're really coming out. And I'm like, crap. So that was wild. The fact that they got as many people back in there was amazing to me, because there were a lot of cars leaving at that time. So I don't know what it was from the balcony area is all I do know. Right. Todd said something about a possible fire in a concession stand, but I have not heard that any other place. So I don't know. It could have just been somebody pulling a fire alarm.
Right.
You would think that there would be a way to find out as quickly as possible where it came from. Is there something going on in that area before you evacuate 17,000 people?
Yeah. Crazy.
Well, but maybe it worked.
Greg Gard thought it did, right?
Did he say something like that? I didn't see that.
He made some kind of snippy comment about how it helped change momentum or something.
Oh, crap. You have no excuses if you lose to Indiana.
I can't.
Nothing
disagree.
else has worked.
I can't disagree.
Why are college coaches so quick to make excuses nowadays?
Gotta have
It's
a reason,
crazy.
baby.
Because they make so much money and they don't want to see the gravy train in.
Yeah. But apparently Indiana got over the hump last night, Rick.
Yeah, that's what Khalil Ware said.
What's new with you, man? You've got the are you going to the Louisville game tonight, I assume?
It's at Duke.
It's in Duke.
Oh, it is. I was thinking that was in Louisville for some reason.
Nope.
Well, I tweeted yesterday that if this game was against anybody but Louisville, there would be absolutely no question on whether or not Filipowski is going to play. That whole situation cracked me up because
10 seconds, Jim. There we go.
36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is Wednesday. It's hump day. And the captain is here appropriately as Indiana apparently gets over the hump last night, according to Khalil Ware. Something that that has been so elusive that has taken however many games they've played already, 27 thereabouts. But they get not only a win, a solid win against, I get you'd like to say a solid team, but it is against a team that was 8-1 and is now 10-7 in league play.
Yeah, the Badgers are going the wrong direction. Early in the year, they had some bad losses, kind of turned it around and led the Big Ten by a couple of games early in the year. Made their way, I think, into the top 10 at some point. I think at some point they were up in the top 10, but it's not going the right way for them now, and they still have to make a trip to Purdue, so they're going to lose at least one more. But for Indiana, considered their tortured history with Wisconsin over the last 25 years, any win over Wisconsin is a win to celebrate. And, you know, I'm not sure how many times they beat Wisconsin. Even I know they haven't beaten them in Madison. They haven't beaten them that many times in Bloomington over the last 15 years for sure.
Yeah, it's not been a fun run for them. They get Xavier Johnson back last night, and although he played 15 minutes and had 5 turnovers in that 15 minutes, which is a lot. I'd have to go back and watch them individually to see were they all just egregious? Is it rust? But it didn't stand out to me at the time. So, and you could see when he came into the game, his impact was kind of immediate with his speed. God, Indiana is, you can see how lacking they are just by putting him in the game. Which that's a bad sign for Indiana. And it really shows you why this team has been as bad as they've been. It's not about Xavier. It's about anybody in that spot that can move at that speed.
Yeah. I mean, they got to fix that spot, whether it's Ja'Kai Newton, whether it's somebody in the transfer portal, whether it's a decommitment from another school. They got to get a couple guys, not one, a couple guys to play in that position because they've had injuries in that spot for a number of years. And guys do get hurt in college basketball, so you can't put yourself in a situation like they've been all of the season. When Xavier goes out, the quality of the performance hurts. And I think it hurts the most defensively because I think Johnson is their most tenacious and talented on the ball defender. He's able to make the opposing point guard uncomfortable at times, not just let guys do whatever they want to do. Maybe Cups will get to that point, but, Woodson said it. I mean, you've said it. I've said it. We watched him. I mean, I think Cups will be a fine player, but he's been asked to do too much too soon. He's not ready for what he had to do this season. He's not ready in terms of his body being mature enough. He's not ready and hadn't had enough time in the weight room. And experience-wise, he's not ready, and it's shown.
And I don't mean to disparage Gabe in any way, but if you compare him to someone like Reed Sheppard, who is obviously a phenomenal freshman guard at Kentucky, but the chasm between those two players is so great, you have to ask: is this a player that should have been recruited to Indiana? With that chasm so far apart. Obviously Reed Sheppard is different. He's at the top. I think he's gonna be a first round pick.
He might be the best. He'll be a freshman All-American. I mean, among the freshmen, and he might be the best freshman in the country. He might be. I mean, he's made so many big plays, and he's got NBA athleticism. I mean, he does, and he's an unbelievable shot maker. I mean, his 3-point shooting percentage has been over 40% all year. That's the one thing I've been a little bit puzzled with about Cups. I thought he would be a better shooter. And he hasn't been, and he doesn't seem to be assertive enough to take shots at times. I mean, he seems to just, I'm going to do what the coaches want me to do, which is not make mistakes. And I get that because he's such a new player, but at some point you got to take the next step and say, I'm going to, in addition to not making mistakes, I'm going to make plays. And we'll see. We'll see if he can do it.
Because we all know that you can look at a stat sheet and there are things that do not show up on a stat sheet that are still very impactful to the game, but you cannot have a line game after game after game that shows 2 points, 1 of 1 shots, 2 rebounds in 20 minutes of play. Hell, you might as well not shown up. Although you might have done a thing or two other, there can't be that many things that you're doing to impact the game that highly. So it's a loss there. But again, I wonder, is that the talent disparity, is it too much? That's part of why Indiana's in the position they're in. We talk about them not having the talent at that spot to either back up Xavier or to be the guy that stood in there. Well, maybe it should have been. Well, not maybe, it should have been. And that's right. The problem for an Indiana not being able to compete when you lose someone like Xavier.
Right. I just looked. Reed Sheppard's actually shooting 51% from 3-point.
Jeez. Holy crap.
He's made 63-point shots, and he's shooting 51%, closer to 52, actually. I mean, this is end of February, man. And Sheppard's made 60. Cups has made 11, so big difference. But I think Cups will be a very solid player going forward. He's just got to he looks like a guy that just needs to get more physically mature and stronger. And I think he can be a very solid player in the league. I mean, he's shown a lot of good things since he's been there, and you just gotta hope he, makes a step forward next year. I mean, I look now, he shot 13 free throws all year. I mean, he's made 8 out of 13. So that tells you he's not aggressive. He's not driving to the basket. He's not getting fouled. Right.
Liry talks about that all the time, that he doesn't do that. And that brings up the question that next year Xavier Johnson won't be there. He's not usually, you kind of know the heir apparent if you have someone on the team already. But I don't see Gabe Cupps as the heir apparent at the starting point guard spot for Indiana next year. They have to bring somebody in that is a above average point guard.
Yeah, they do. And that's going to be hard to do because everybody wants one of those. That's going to be fierce competition for transfer portal point guards who are really good. So they better have a list already of 3 or 4 guys who are their targets, and through back channels or whatever, make sure it's known that they want them in Bloomington next season, because those guys go quick. And some teams have been successful doing that. Look at Michigan State. They got Tyson Walker out of the portal. He's been a good point guard for them. There are other Chris Mack got a bunch of guys at Louisville who were good. First year here, he had Christian Cunningham. Second year here, I think he had Carleek Jones. He's had some dudes who've been pretty good. So they're there. You just have to be able to, identify them and recruit them.
Absolutely. And they'll get to do that, but they'll have to do it on the road, as Indiana picks up a win last night over a Wisconsin team that was probably made for Indiana to beat because of the style they play, with their game being inside. I'd say inside out, but it's just inside. There's not much out. The point paints last night, they actually got outscored in the paint, Rick, 42-38, which is more than a little surprising when you have Kel'el Ware, who starts the first half with 20 points, only 7 second half points for him. But Renew came on in the second half. But man, 17 of 20 between those two guys last night. Indiana shoots 62% from the field, but again, most of their shots come from inside the painted area, which has been what Indiana has done. And to give you a better example, the total number of fast break points in this game, 8. That's combined for both teams.
Yeah, that's not really modern basketball, but that's the way it's going to be. Not going to change this late in this season with this group and this coaching staff. So you just have to sit back and watch and see if they actually do what they said they were going to do this year, which is be a team that wasn't so post-oriented and moving forward. We don't know who's going to be on the team next year. I would say there's a very little chance Kel'el Ware will be on the team. He has games like he had last night. He pretty much cements his status as a likely first-round pick. I expect Mbako to at least go through the process and figure out, if he's going to be drafted. And who knows about, with any player, who else might go in the portal, might not go in the portal.
Yeah, I don't. The only player that I could see possibly going to actually going to the NBA is Ware. And he's going to have to show a little more consistency of games like last night. But part of that is because it was, like I said, that was a game made for him. A game where Indiana is just going to pound it inside. That's what they're going to do. And Wisconsin really played into that because they're not a fast break team either. So it was a slow moving game. But they're not going to get to play. Maryland is not going to play that style of game.
But he had a good game against Maryland last time. He had 18 points and 12 rebounds, so he matches up pretty well with them.
Indiana is not going to go anywhere. They're nothing that, even if they win out, the thing that it changes for Indiana is a positive end to the season. I think that's the best thing that they can hope for, is to go out of this year on as positive a note as possible. Because I can't expect them to win more than 4 straight games.
I mean, I would think the realistic goals they would have to set is try and be a team that doesn't play the first day in the Big Ten tournament. And if the season ended today, they would qualify. I think they moved ahead of Maryland yesterday. They're tied in record, but they have the tiebreaker against them. I'm sure if they lose to Maryland, if they lose to Maryland on Sunday, they'll drop down back into the bottom. Next thing is they can beat Michigan State for a successful senior day and hurt Michigan State's chances of making the NCAA tournament. And the next thing is to try and win a couple of games in the Big Ten tournament, which has been a struggle for years and years and years.
Why is that? I mean, we're talking back from the beginning of the tournament. Indiana has only made the tournament championship one time.
Yeah, under Mike Davis.
So I just, that's something I don't get, because while we know this has also coincided with Indiana's downturn as a program, they have had years where they were good. I mean, really good. 2013, 2016. You win the
Wisconsin
Big Ten.
beat them in 2013. That's one reason. That was in Chicago. I was at that game. In the very early years, Bob Knight was against the Big Ten tournament, so I'm not really sure he put much into it and really didn't care.
Then under Mike Davis, 3-point shot.
What? Yeah. Under Mike Davis, they had the year when they did get to the championship game. I think they lost to Iowa and Luke Recker. And then, Davis's teams kind of went downhill, and they had the bad year when the Minnesota guy threw in the shot when Dockich was the coach. Remember that one? And Green's teams, they just never performed well when the pressure was on in the Big Ten tournament. They just didn't. And then, Archie, I remember the year I went to Chicago, you were probably there when Romeo played. They had to go up there and win a game against Ohio State to get in the Big Ten tournament, and they fell way behind. And then I think, what's his name? Devontae Green threw in a bunch of threes, and they cut it close to late in the game, but they still lost. They don't perform. I mean, I think one of the reasons has been, I think they've ever had somebody make it a big priority saying, this is important. This is important. I don't think they've ever treated it like it was super important. And they haven't been that good over the last 25 years. It's not like they had teams that they haven't been past the Sweet 16 since 2002.
Yep.
Yeah.
Past it. Yes. Yeah, they have. Did they play? They have not even played in an Elite Eight game.
2002.
Yeah. I guess the closest they came was losing to North Carolina. I think that's the year North Carolina won a national championship.
2017 in Philadelphia, but they got blown out by North Carolina in that game. That was after they had some injuries and stuff. But I mean, yeah, they lost in the Sweet 16 also to obviously the Syracuse game. And in 2012, actually, I think the best performance they had was the year before. They played Kentucky, which won the national championship down in Atlanta, and they actually played. Well. That was after Verdell got hurt.
That was like a 90-something to 80-something game, a high-scoring game.
102 to 90.
Yeah, it was a high score. Yeah. I knew it was a high score. I remember it being a high-scoring game, fun game, actually.
102 to 90.
So at least we'll get. I was just thinking about it. I forgot that the Indiana-Kentucky series has actually been renewed.
Yeah. Better get some players. You got a year and a few months to get some players in.
I'm telling you, that is. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But that has been a godsend that there has been some space for that. But Rick Bozich from WDRB.com with us right now. Great article out yesterday comparing who's feeling the pain more, Louisville fans or Indiana fans right now. Pretty.
Yeah, I want to get your answer. What do you think?
And he gave a good frickin' frack argument back and forth, and I'll give you that when we come back after this. Brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, and beer located right off of I-65.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
How was the crowd last night?
Oh, I wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
I saw photos, though. It looked like it was pretty empty in the balconies, and then there were some patches in the corners and stuff like that. Excuse me.
Can't believe they're down to one home game.
Yeah. And the 2 road games are teams that they've already beaten at home. So it would be something if they find a way to win all 3 of their final. I mean, I guess including last night, their final 4 games, but I don't know how much you can
see that happening.
yeah.
They might be able to win one road game, maybe.
I feel like they'll lose at Minnesota for whatever reason.
Yeah,
I don't see them losing to Maryland. I just think that I think you said it earlier, Khalil Ware matches up well with them, and that'll probably help them in a big way. Road games are not as impossible to win as people say they are.
I still don't see them winning on the road, but
remember they played Maryland had that horrible game shooting threes against Indiana. Weren't they like 2 of 20 or something? So it was ridiculous.
Maryland coming into that was a bad shooting team. That wasn't just a coincidence.
There's a little bit of a edge to that rivalry though, because Willard's beaten Woodson for 3 recruits.
That's true.
Right? Oh, Indiana and Louisville. To me, that's an easier answer.
What's the answer?
Indiana fans, because Louisville at least has a 2013 national championship, taken down or not taken down, that wasn't that long ago that they can look at. They also had Rick Pitino that not that long ago. So Indiana fans have just been going through for 25 years, 24 years, whatever it's been. It's just been a complete.
I don't think that's really the question. Is the question more so who's more frustrated at this very moment?
Right.
Okay, yeah.
In this very moment.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Indiana fans. I think
I actually think I agree. I would have said Louisville fans a few months ago, but
the expectations weren't as high for Louisville, I don't think, as they were for Indiana. And you got Khalil Ware, you've got all these talent that they have. And
with Louisville, it's more so. I feel like they just kind of know where it's heading, and so they're just kind of waiting at this point.
They're resigned to their fate, waiting for a regime change.
Yes, like the anger in December from Louisville fans was unprecedented. And I mean, the anger is still there, but it's more silent anger at this point.
Indiana fans have been in a perpetual state of this, right where this program is right now, I think. Group is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this hump day. The Captain Rick Bozich from WDRB.com with us now, and I had a great piece yesterday. If you didn't read it, you need to go there and take it in. He had a great conversation with himself, or with his 2 friends, Frick and Frack, on whether or not Louisville fans or Indiana fans are during this season or at the biggest point of strife. And if I had to pick between the two, I would say that it's Indiana fans, because they are in the same position today that they seem like they have been in for so long. And that's, we need a new coach. Indiana, we need a new coach. Fans said, we need a new coach, which may or may not be the case, but it's this perpetual roller coaster ride that they've been on. And like you guys talked about in the break, expectations weren't that high. Louisville saw what they had last year, and I don't know how much they expected, how much change they really expected. Where the expectations were there for Indiana doesn't mean that they were accurately there, but they were there. But I still think that Indiana fans have a bigger reason to be disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the misery index, I'd say Louisville fans at some point earlier in the year passed into a state of that's the way it's going to be this year. Get to wait it out to the end of the year and see what happens in terms of a coaching change and who they get next. With Indiana fans, I think they thought going to be a slight step back after losing Trace Jackson Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino, maybe be in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten, be a bubble team, at the worst, if things go really well, be a team that makes the tournament for sure. And for them to be pretty much irrelevant from the middle of January after the Purdue loss at home on, I think people are puzzled about how bad it's been, and the style of basketball hasn't been what Mike Woodson said it was going to be. I mean, he said multiple times last year, did he not, that they were going to no longer be so post-oriented. That wasn't the way he played in the NBA, and he had to play that way because he had Trace Jackson Davis, and that hasn't been the way it's been. And when you're at Indiana and you get swept by Nebraska and Penn State and have lost 4 in a row to Northwestern,
Nebraska, Penn State, and Northwestern all in the same season.
Yeah, nobody's gonna say that's okay. Nobody.
Right? Nope. Absolutely. Michael saying that he can't believe that he doesn't recall a team having only 2 turnovers in the whole game. Actually, Wisconsin had 3 turnovers last night, but they also, Indiana, that's a slow pace of game for one thing. And the fact that Indiana still managed to have 12 turnovers, that's a little alarming, first of all. But Indiana also only, as your piece pointed out, I think, as a matter of fact, they also only forced 3 turnovers against Northwestern. So this is the second time this season, Indiana has only forced 3 turnovers in an entire game. This is more understanding, I guess, because of the style that Wisconsin plays. But Northwestern is up and down the floor. How you can only get 3 turnovers out of them in a game like that, that is what's concerning.
It's very alarming. It tells you that you're not putting any pressure on the ball. You're not making the other team uncomfortable. You're not athletic enough, I guess, or your scheme isn't good enough to find ways to exploit weaknesses in the other team, or your guys aren't following the scouting report. You can come up with a million reasons, but the main thing I would say is that you're not getting up and getting into guys and making them uncomfortable or do things that they don't want to do. I mean, 3 is an extraordinarily low number, and to have it happen twice, in 4 or 5 games. The Northwestern game was February 18th, so that's twice in 11 days. Or 10 days, actually. That's not good. That tells you all you need to know about the level of defense Indiana plays.
Yeah, and speaking of that, personal fouls. Andy points out very wild. This is a crazy stat. Wisconsin had 14 personal fouls last night. Kind of a low number. And I remember sitting next to the Wisconsin SID last night, and I'm like, man, they're letting them play tonight. And it wasn't one way or the other. There were just a couple plays. I'm like, okay, that's a foul on somebody. I don't know exactly who it's a foul on, but that's a foul on somebody. But Indiana only with 8 personal fouls for the game, 5 of them come from one player.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm going back, and there's a Penn State game in February. They only forced 6 turnovers. That's a low number, right?
Yeah.
There's Ohio State had 12. I'm just going through them real quick. Purdue only had 9, under 10. That's not good. The next game was Northwestern, 3. The next game was Nebraska, 8. Not a high number. I mean, it's a trend, and it tells you that trying to pressure the ball and trying to turn the other team over is not a priority. I guess their defensive game plan is to funnel guys to the middle and hope that Khalil Ware is going to block shots, but they're not. When you don't create turnovers, you're not giving yourself a chance to get easy offense by turning those turnovers into fast break points. And you're also not reducing the number of possessions the other team has. So those are not good. That's not a good strategy to win basketball games.
No, and I think it's also indicative of Indiana's defense or lack thereof, where it's always a chasing defense. They're always behind. The speed is not there at guard. There were so many good guards in the Big Ten that especially without Xavier Johnson, Indiana is always chasing those guys. And it's just another issue that Indiana is going to have to fix in the off season. And that's what their goal has to be. They just to finish this year on a positive, and try to use that in a recruiting standpoint, because they are going to have a lot of holes to fill. We already know the holes that they're going to have to fill. We don't know the ones that are going to be a surprise.
No, we don't, because you don't know who's going to go in the portal. And these days, you pretty much have to assume that every player is at least going to consider going into the portal, because that's what guys do these days. That's what they do. At least half the roster will go into the portal and try and find out what their value is. So, that's good and bad. It's bad because there might be some guys in your team that you want to keep that you're not able to keep, but it's good because there might be some guys on other teams that you wouldn't think are willing to leave that might be willing to come, A, for an opportunity to play, which will be there at Indiana, and B, because of NIL opportunities. And everybody I've talked to says IU is in the top 10 in the country in terms of what its NIL, resources are.
Absolutely. Brad, I'm not sure what he's asking here, Rick, but he says, Rick, have they shared what level Colson Montgomery will start the season?
Colson Montgomery is the kid from not Heritage Hills. He's from Southridge, I think, Southern Indiana, who was the number 1 draft pick of the White Sox.
I was thinking that's where that was going.
Archie had told him he could walk on at IU, play basketball. He was that good. But he signed with the White Sox as a first-round draft pick. He actually got a single and a sacrifice fly yesterday in spring training. I believe he will start the year in AA. He might be at AAA.
Well, good for him. Let's see. He's probably talking to me.
Me?
No, I don't. I said he's probably talking about me.
There's been a lot to knock this year. If you're,
it's Reality Ranch, people. It's Reality Ranch.
Yeah, this not making the tournament, not even making the NIT, deserves to be knocked. This is a big business.
It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable.
You can look back, even when Bob Knight was losing his fastball, he still made the tournament every year.
Yeah,
every year.
Exactly. That was still the norm.
Yeah.
His average was better than most people's good.
Right. Yeah.
And that says a lot.
The lack of consistency, it's pent up frustration because it's the lack of consistency. It's the lack of deep tournament runs. It's the lack of seeing the plan moving forward, all of those reasons. Right.
Oh, absolutely. Not having a plan has been the biggest thing.
The big dog in the Big Ten now is Purdue. They are.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Right below them is Michigan State, which is still hanging on. They've taken a step backwards. Wisconsin seems to be drifting down a little bit more. Rutgers is going to be up there next year because they have 2 of the top 3 recruits in the country.
Great recruiting class coming in.
And so, it's all about being one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the Big Ten every year, right? That's what it's about. And if you can maintain that kind of consistency, then success in the NCAA tournament will follow. But to have a team if you are back to the position of where they were in the Crean years early of playing on the first day in the NCAA tournament, I think Archie might have done it once too. I don't remember, but I don't think anybody in Indiana should be accepting or celebrating that.
No, and Ware absolutely played his butt off. A great night for him. He missed 1 shot all night long. 11 of 12. Of course, those are all coming in and around the basket, but those are still plenty of guys missed those shots. 27 points on 11 of 12 shooting. He hit his only 3-point attempt. He was 4 of 4 at the free throw line, and he had 11 rebounds to go along with that, and no personal fouls and 1 turnover. So that's a lot of time with the ball in your hands to have 1 turnover.
Yeah, what Mike Woodson has done with Trace Jackson Davis and Kalel Ware, he should be applauded for. He's made both of those guys better players. Trace Jackson Davis is achieving more than his skeptics thought he would achieve in the NBA. He's playing about quite a bit for the Warriors, much more than most second-round draft picks play. And Ware has a chance to be drafted, I think, late first round. And that should be something they should be able to sell to young big guys or big guys in the portal. Say, okay, you want to follow this blueprint? Come in here. We know how to develop big guys. But as of right now, they don't have a guy to play that role next year. The same kind of role. Who I guess who's going to be the 5 next year? Didn't he say last night that he's trying to develop Malik Renault as a 4? Isn't that what Woodson said in the press conference?
I mean, that's what he is. I mean, truth be told. So why would you not? He has to. My question is,
to be the center. They don't have one.
Oh, they've got to go out and get him. I mean, they did not
get
a point Derek Queen, and they've got a lot of things, and who knows what else. My question is, would these guys be looked at as being as good if Indiana had a better team around them? Because other guys would be taking more shots, would be taking more of the scoring load off. And so these numbers would not be the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think NBA scouts, they look at how guys perform in individual matchups.
When you get the chance.
Yeah. I think a lot of times they pick games like this. He's going against a good dude tonight. I want to go see how he does. And Ware's done okay. I mean, he's not done well in a few games. But he's done okay. I mean, I don't see him as a guy who will be much of a factor in the NBA next year because he's not physically strong enough. He's got to mature into his body. He can make perimeter shots, and I think that will appeal to people. But he's got to become just a more physical and explosive type player. He still gets pushed around, I think, a little bit.
Oh, definitely needs lots more muscle on his frame. But at the same time, look at someone like Zach Edey, who does not have that problem. But I also wonder about what will his success in the NBA be, because his only ability is within about 4 feet of the rim.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Edey will have to find a coach and a general manager that are willing to, find ways to maximize what he can do well. There's a lot of teams that won't be interested in him at all because he doesn't fit the modern style of NBA basketball. But there are always
he can't defend the guys.
Huh?
He's going to have trouble defending guys that are taking him all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to take him out on the perimeter and pick and roll him to death. And that'll be his big problem. But there'll be a coach or two who says, you know what, we can go against the grain a little bit and we're going to play him, and we'll find some ways to get some value out of him. I think he'll be picked. I don't think it'd be a first round pick, but I think he'll get picked and get a chance.
With that question, someone will take a chance on him. What is up next for you?
Well, tonight,
great piece again. Yesterday, it came out yesterday. So I know that Louisville takes on Duke, but
tonight's Louisville Duke. This weekend, Louisville finishes its season with 3 home games. They got Syracuse Saturday night, Virginia Tech, I think next Tuesday or Wednesday, and then they finish up against Boston College, and then off to the ACC tournament, and then we'll find out what's going to happen here with Kenny Payne.
What are your expectations? Obviously, I'm from the outside looking in, but I don't see how they don't make a change just because of the fan apathy, the lack of success, and lack of it seeming like it's really going in a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, the small crowds, the fan anger, the lack of success makes it a tough road going forward. But 4 games to go and one in the ACC tournament, and we'll have our answer probably 2 weeks from today, because I think they'll open in the ACC tournament 2 weeks from yesterday. And if they don't win, I would say 2 weeks from today, we'll have our answer.
And it will be the fun will begin, because then who will Louisville target?
That's a great question. A lot of people early on, it was Musselman. That kind of has changed this week. If you believe Trilly Donovan, it's no longer Musselman. Now people are talking about Chris Beard, Greg McDermott, the guy at Kansas State, Jerome Tang.
Same names you hear for about any
Dusty
job.
May. Dusty May's another one. You've talked to Dusty May. You think he would come here?
I don't think so.
1 minute.
But I think there's going to have to be a really good reason to get him out of Boca Raton, Florida.
Okay.
And not just another job, because he can probably get that anytime. But you're only hot for a while sometimes.
And he's not as hot this year as he was last year, because South Florida is winning the league, not Florida Atlantic.
Yeah, and we'll see what he does. Rick Bozich, cannot thank you enough. Make sure you're giving him a follow, and go to WDRB.com for your coverage of college athletics. Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
Jim.
You betcha. Thank you. Big thanks to Kyle Neddenriep as well from the Indy Star. Make sure for coverage of the Indiana boys basketball tournament, turn there, and he'll keep you updated on all that is going on there. I think I'm going to head down to Princeton tonight and take in the Princeton Heritage Hills semi. Is this a semifinal or a quarterfinal game? Either way, take that in. That should be a good rematch. And then we're back tomorrow to do this again. Shannon Griffith will join us. We'll talk some football. Let's see, Tyler Smith as well to talk IU basketball. What else do we have, John Boy?
Kristen Airy talks some Pacers.
Tristan Airy talking Pacers. Didn't hear from Mike Whitson today. We will try to get that into you tomorrow, though. But appreciate you guys more than you know. As always, without you, we have no reason to be here. Thanks to John for keeping us between the white lines. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports.